what you would say, and to hear it whether through my words or in spite of it. Lord, help us to be a part of the congregation that listens to your Sermon on the Mount and is transformed by it. For this we pray. Amen. So, for those of you who have not been with us for the last couple weeks, we started a new series on the Sermon on the Mount, and we are looking at the teachings of Jesus kind of line by line. As I kind of introduced it a couple weeks ago, I said, as a pastor, if I'm going to steal a sermon from somewhere, I might as well steal from God. So, anyways, we have been looking at this, and we are now in our third week, and we will look at the line that Jesus taught: Blessed are the gentle, for they shall inherit the earth. And like the two before it, blessed are those who are poor in spirit, for theirs is the kingdom of heaven. And blessed are those who mourn, for they shall be comforted. This particular line also probably caused just as much confusion in the people that heard it as the previous two had done. Because after all, the people who are there listening to Jesus' sermon would have to reflect on the rulers and the people that they know. And the idea of the meek or the humble or the gentle, all words that particular phrase can translate into, ruling the world just seemed to contradict everything they knew. I mean, let's look at the people that ruled over Israel. You had King Herod, a man who was so into himself, so into being king and his right to be king, that when Jesus was born, was willing to kill a whole bunch, all children under the age of 2, in the city of Bethlehem to guarantee that a new king did not arise. If that's an example of not being gentle, I don't know if I could come up with a better one. And then you have Pontius Pilate. Pilate is the governor of the Roman soldiers, and Pilate was notorious for putting people to death, for being extremely hard and strict, for being oppressive to the Jewish people, and for condemning them and looking down upon them. Even the Roman soldiers would do whatever they want to the persons under their occupation. The Roman soldiers, if they saw a young lady that they were attracted to, they had no qualms in asserting their authority and having their way. And the Roman soldiers, if they saw something that they wanted, they would just take it. And this is the authority that they see under Pilate. These clearly are not gentle men. And then you have Caesar himself. Caesar, a man who believed he was no less than a god. A man who chose to send out his legions of armies to take over the entire known world, to march across the face of the earth and bring wealth and power back to him in his capital of Rome. Gentleness was not something that the Jewish people would have looked for in the rulers of the world. This is a people that had been taken into captivity by the Babylonians, a people that had been defeated in war by the Assyrians, a people that knew suffering under the hands of men who influenced and had power through force of arms. How could the gentle, how could the meek ever possibly inherit the earth, overthrow the powers that be? And yet here are Jesus' words. Blessed are those who are gentle, blessed are the meek, blessed are the humble, for they shall inherit the earth. I think even now, looking at our own leaders, I don't know how many people that we have in Washington, D.C. that we would ever describe as humble. I'm not sure that we would describe many of them as meek, and probably most of them we would not describe as gentle. And yet, that's how the world seems to find power, despite Jesus' words. So what does Jesus mean? And I think Jesus is trying to teach us a little bit about himself, a little bit about God, and a little bit about what is to come. You see, Jesus was gentle. Jesus was humble. Jesus was meek. So meek, that in fact, so humble, so gentle, in fact, that when the Roman soldiers came and took him, when they beat him, and when the Jewish people called for his crucifixion, he didn't call in the armies of God, the undefeatable armies of God, to rescue him and to punish the people. Instead, he loved them and asked for their forgiveness. And then he resurrected, and he became King of kings and Lord of all creation. You see, Jesus knew that there is strength in gentleness and in humility. Jesus knew that God's way of ordering the world, God's ultimate victory, would not be had through a show of force and power, but through a show of love. And Jesus would teach about turning the other cheek, and he would be the kind of man who would care for others rather than seek retaliation or power. And he's telling the congregation there around him that if you are going to be the children of God, if you are going to be my followers, then that's who you need to be as well. And if you trust in me, and if you believe in me, and you know that I am God, then you know that I will be victorious in the end, and you know that in being gentle and loving and kind and humble, ultimately, you will inherit and you will win the earth that I am preparing for you. Jesus was teaching something divine rather than something worldly. And that's where we lose people. That's where people begin to fail to understand, is they begin to look around for examples and they fail to look at the greatest example. Now, as we were planning this Sunday, I can tell you that my worship committee was giving me a hard time about "Blessed are the gentle" falling on Mother's Day. And they were asking the question, well, why didn't you put it on Father's Day? And playing with me and trying to go with the stereotype. But I think that there is a little bit of truth to the idea that mothers are gentle. And I think that because I want you to think about perhaps some experiences you've had in your own life with mothers. I mean, think about how a mom can deal with a problem versus dad. Mom can sit there and she can be silent, completely silent. And dad can know that he is done messed up, right? That there's something going on, that something wrong. Like, mom can sit there in the middle of an argument and start going silent, and dad will sit there and continue to talk himself until he realizes that he's completely wrong and that mom's right. Or mom will give that look, right? That look that says, well, you know what you did. Never has to say anything, never has to raise a finger, and you know what you've done. You know that you're in trouble, right? Gentleness. She doesn't have to show force of power or arms. Moms just have that innate ability to help us learn and understand without ever actually having to do anything to us. And I think that's kind of an amazing thing. It's a way of seeing that strength. And moms also have that ability to endure and to love and to sacrifice for us, even when it costs them a lot. And they do it oftentimes without gratitude, right? so many times, there's so many things that our mothers have done for us, whether it was having dinner ready for us when we got home, or taking care of us, or making sure we had clothes, or clean clothes, or whether it was teaching us how to take care of ourselves. All of these things that moms do in our lives that just show how much they love us. And even when we misbehaved and didn't want to do our chores or failed to do our chores, they still were there to kind of help us. Right? Blessed are the gentle, for they shall inherit the earth. I think Jesus put moms in our lives as an example of how we can be gentle, of how there can be a strength in not having to be the loud or the violent or the threatening one. I think that if I remember right, my grandmother's greatest threat to my dad and his brothers and stuff was, just wait till your father gets home, right? She didn't have to do anything to them, but just telling them, just wait till your father gets home. And they knew that they had better change their behavior quite quickly. And there's a strength in that she can tolerate it, she'll let it go until Dad gets home, but, at that point, Dad's going to deal with it. And I think that as moms, we can learn a lot from them. They point us toward Jesus and how that we have that strength and how that we can be a humble people, a gentle people, and still get things done, still be a people that inherit the earth and overcome. And so what I want for us to kind of take from this particular teaching of Jesus today on a long-term, more practical level is be gentle. Be meek. Be humble, because we can trust in God to be our champion. We can trust that God will make all things right, and we do not need to take actions in our own hands. We do not need to be a reactive people, and instead we can be a proactive people that loves even our enemies. Because we know that our victory is in Jesus and in God, and not in our own hands. On a more practical level for today, as opposed to the long term. Though it would be good to do this in the long term as well. I want you to find ways of sharing with the mothers in your lives, the women who have influenced you, who have helped raise you, who have taught you. Find ways of appreciating them and telling them thank you. And if your mom is not available to be thanked in person, ask God to thank her for you. Because I bet that she's there with God waiting and watching and loving you just as much as when she was with us. And also don't forget the women who served as mothers, who may have not been your biological mother, may have not been your mother by marriage, but who nonetheless were there for you all through your life when you needed them. Who may be like a teacher, or who may have just been a close aunt or a sister, or somebody who just exemplifies gentleness and loving personalities in your life. Be sure to thank them, because they are mothers of their own. Let us go from this place in the strength of Jesus Christ, trusting in His mercies and graces, and allowing our gentleness to shine forth, that the world may know Christ through His love. May we learn to be quiet in our strength, to be gentle and humble in our strength. Amen.